welcome
to the
Christchurch Fox Chapel podcast. It's the fastest growing conservative, evangelical, charismatic
Anglican.
Oh, come on, honey. Podcast in the entire Fox Chapel area. Ben and I joined today by Kat. It's kind of a fun day. It's voting day. There's a lot of fun on the hill today.
super fun.
Oh, isn't it?
I just love election day.
Love election day.
I really love seeing all the political signs around there. I just feel like it fills me with a sense of wholeness in my spirit.
Well, there's a sense on a day of election as though there's going to be a sort of judgment cast, and then people are going to
segue.
Really? Because today we're talking about judgment.
Yes. Get ready, everyone. If you're in a car, buckle up.
Buckle up.
No, it's actually going to be fun.
Well, we started recording the podcast and we basically stopped because we realised it was really boring and we didn't know what we were doing. And here we are again, round 2.
Well, it's because this is a hard text.
It is a hard text.
Very difficult.
Ben, you said a few moments ago, right, that it feels like chapter 2, the end ends. It's kind of where the book ends at the end of chapter 2. Now we've got chapter 3 and we're not quite sure why it's here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you said, love, like, I don't even know what we're talking about here and why are we...
Yeah, like I didn't really understand the context.
Well, Sorry, it's like you got locust plague, Israel repents, like and laments and all that stuff. They return to the Lord, and then the Lord restores them. And then beyond that, he says, "I'll pour out my spirit on all flesh in the latter days, or it shall come to pass afterward." We're going to have wonders in the heavens and the day of the Lord, and anyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. End of the chapter.
Right.
End of the book. But wait, no, it's not the end of the book. There's another chapter.
It does feel a bit like Lord of the Rings. Whoa. When Sauron gets defeated, and then there's this chapter called The Scouring of the Shires, and they go around and they just deal with all the little last bits of goblin that are knocking around. And, it's a bit of an anticlimactic chapter in the book. And it feels a bit like maybe that's going on here. There's some loose ends to tidy up. They're actually very significant loose ends because they're indicative, as all prophecies are, not just of an immediate fulfillment, an immediate problem that needs to be resolved in Judah before Christ, but also of something later, including, in fact, the end of the world.
Yeah, and I think when we think about judgment, that have you ever heard that phrase, water under the bridge, in different relationships? Like, there's a lot of stuff that gets complicated. Like, different people have sins along the way against each other, and it all kind of starts swirling together, and it just becomes this like big tangled knot of stuff. And sometimes I think that the world is almost like that. Like, there's so much sin and so much brokenness that's all tied together in this impossibly complex knot. And I think of like the last judgment is like the day that God will untie that, and it's going to take incredible attention to detail from one who only from one who knows everything.
So lots of detail is actually exposed and dealt with on the day of judgment.
Yeah.
There's some stuff obviously been going on in the background of Joel that we, the reader today, don't really realize was going on until now. So chapter 3 is dealing with the nations, plural, around Israel, who seemingly have been at least gloating over the misfortunes of the people of God. And this wasn't really the immediate concern of Joel's chapters 1 and 2, because they've got bigger problems. But it seems as though the bad guys on the edge, around and about, were having a laugh at the misfortune, but not just having a laugh. They were also taking advantage of the vulnerability of the people of God. And that did not get overlooked, as it turns out, by Yahweh. But he's coming to deal with them now. He's restored the people of God, but also we now need to deal with the bad guys.
Yeah.
Should we read the passage?
Yeah. Who's going to read it for us, darling?
Ben.
Okay.
Thanks, Kathy.
It's your intro.
Cool. How many? It's up to verse
8.
8. Here we go. Joel chapter 3, verses 1 to 8. For behold, in those days and at that time, when I restore the fortunes of Judah and Jerusalem, I will gather all the nations and bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat, and I will enter into judgment with them there on behalf of my people and my heritage Israel, because they have scattered them among the nations and have divided up my land, and have cast lots for my people, and have traded a boy for a prostitute, and have sold a girl for wine, and have drunk it. What are you to me, O Tyre and Sidon, and all the regions of Philistia? Are you paying me back for something? If you are paying me back, I will return your payment on your own head swiftly and speedily. For you have taken my silver and my gold, and have carried my rich treasures into your temples. You have sold the people of Judah and Jerusalem to the Greeks in order to remove them far from their own border. Behold, I will stir them up from the place to which you have sold them, and I will return your payment on your own head. I will sell your sons and your daughters into the hand of the people of Judah, and they will sell them to the Sabaeans, to a nation far away, for the Lord has spoken. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely a sense that some outrageous things have taken place during this crisis that we didn't know about until now.
Positive, encouraging.
J-Love. Yeah. These guys have come in, they've stolen God's silver and gold. They've stolen God's people. They've sold God's people. And they've sold them for next to nothing. That's the thing. They've sold them to do bad things, and they've got next to nothing for them.
Right.
You've sold a boy for a prostitute. That is, you've exchanged the value of a human life, and not just a human life, but someone who belongs to the covenant people of God, for this tawdry night. And you've sold a girl for wine, and have drunk it, just like a skin of wine or something.
Yeah.
And then that human is going to spend the rest of their life miles from home in a pagan land, mistreated as a thing in exchange for nothing.
Yeah.
And what we get here, I think, is the sense of just how outraged Yahweh is about this. Now, I think one of the themes that we need to explore today is the interplay between justice and revenge.
Mm-hmm.
Justice is that godly desire to see wrong things put right, to see bad guys get their comeuppance, a fair judging and retribution and restitution and all of those things. That's what justice is all about. And revenge, I think, is about us deciding that we're going to become the agents of that. We're going to bring this about. In other words, we're going to take God's role upon ourselves.
Right.
I think that's what we need to look at a little bit today. So the motive of God's people, I guess during all of this suffering, they were also experiencing on top of it the humiliation and anguish of their things being plundered by people that could have sent help. How do they feel? How do we feel when that happens? Bad.
Not so good.
Not happy, angry.
So I was listening to a podcast from Dan Allender, actually. He's like a famous Christian writer. I don't know that much about him, but he was making this point that the thing that people fear most is not death, but humiliation. So like being humiliated, being plundered is like worse than dying.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Especially if you're in the midst of suffering. Like I kind of get where now there's this connection of you really can't feel the joy of full restoration unless you can also see that the injustices that were done to you and to your people are executed and by the righteous judge who has who has been with you all along. So I get that, right? Because heaven wouldn't really be heaven unless part of that is knowing that God is going to deal with the people that we have been so disheartened by or frustrated by or hurt by or seen other people be hurt by. There's something about him executing judgment, even though that includes us.
Yeah.
But when we see whole people groups being traded or taken advantage of or hurt or treated inhumanely, we desperately want that to be dealt with. And
right.
So I got now the connection between the 2 and 3.
Yeah.
It is.
I've experienced that actually. Like there was a person who I worked with who was frankly pretty manipulative and almost downright abusive. And went for several years just thinking like, wow, I'm a real loser. The problem's all me. And first thing that was healing was coming here, and you all are not that way. And so I was like, oh, one of these things is not like the other. But then that person was called out on their and basically it was named, and there was a whole investigation of this person and stuff, and I just felt like, oh, I'm not crazy. Like, okay,
I'm not alone.
I'm not alone in that. Like something in me just exhaled.
Yeah.
And knowing that somehow justice had been done. I was craving that, but I didn't know that I was craving that.
And you didn't have to be a part of it. Yeah. You weren't necessarily part of that particular process.
I was not at all.
But seeing that happen, there's a peace that comes like, okay, yes, that has been dealt with. And I guess that's what God's doing here, right? His people have been treated inhumanely. They've been taken advantage of when they were at their lowest, when they were going through a struggle, through a crisis. And he's not only going to restore them, but part of that restoration is dealing with the people who kicked them when they were down. Right.
Which enables them not to then become vigilantes.
Right. Because they don't have to.
They can trust the perfect judgment of Yahweh.
Right.
Because their judgment, if the people of God were to go and just seek revenge in their own strength, according to the way they see it, they would get it wrong.
Yeah.
They would overreact to some things. They'd underreact to others.
Right.
They wouldn't judge justly.
No, because we don't have the ability like God to see into the human heart, to know motivations, to know why a person did a certain thing in a certain way. And we can just, as believers, we can let that go.
Right. It's like when Saddam Hussein is dragged out of that little hole he was in, and, put on trial. We want due process.
Yeah.
We want a court. We want all those things. This is much better than that. This is the perfect judgment of Yahweh. Even down to some of the name we were just looking at. That he will bring them down to what he says is the Valley of Jehoshaphat. Whether that's a place or not, I don't know. But Jehoshaphat, it literally means Yahweh has judged. In the past tense.
Yeah.
So you're going to be brought to this place where judgment is set because God's sovereignty extends beyond time. And so this is one of those classic prophecy moments where we're looking at one prophecy for two moments, right? You've got this immediate thing that's going to take place right then and there in the dust of Jerusalem, and you've got another thing looking ahead to the end of days when Yahweh will judge the living and the dead perfectly.
It's not a very popular notion in our culture, the idea of God as judge.
No, but the idea of justice is very popular.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
From classic movies like High Plains Drifter with Clint Eastwood and TV shows from the 80s like The A-Team and Knight Rider, all the way through to the newer stuff, The Punisher, The Equalizer, which is a rehash of a thing from the 60s. And we were just talking earlier about that really dark thing, the Terminal List.
Yeah.
Well, there's a whole movement through our society of demanding justice, and it's a super live question,
right?
From all over the place, and there's a movement toward seeking racial justice, and I think which has caused massive amounts of there's so much political questions around it.
But you can see when crowds seek justice, how ugly things get fast.
Exactly. And I think there's that question looming in all of it is, well, who's the person who gets to execute the justice, and who gets to be the court to arbitrate what was, like, who's responsible for what, and sort all of that out. That's the challenge when we come to these kind of issues, when we're talking about seeking a just society. You've got, how do I know, like, what wrongs have been done? How do we level the playing field in a way that's right?
One of the wonderful things is that what the people of God have received themselves is actually grace, because they were wandering from Yahweh and they were worshipping these created things. They were mistreating one another. They were hoarding. They were bad. Yeah. And Yahweh sends this plague upon them of locusts for the purposes of calling them back to himself. He destroys their idols, eats them literally. And then finally, when all that's taken away, they repent. Yeah. And then they experience renewal. And as the bishop said last weekend, he said, lots of people pray for renewal until they get it. They don't like it. Because when you get renewed, normally that means losing something. So this group of people, they've been through loss, they've been through renewal, which is fantastic. Knowing that they've received grace, that's got to be in their hearts.
Yeah.
And then they've still got this problem, the fact that these bad guys around them have done appalling things. They've literally taken the actual children and sold them and taken them far away. And they're not feeling very gracious, I'm sure. And then Yahweh says, but I did not overlook this. I am going to bring true justice, true judgment upon these heads. I'm going to repay them. What does he say? I'm going to repay them with the thing they did to me. What does he say? It's a great thing. I will return your payment on your own head swiftly and speedily. He's speaking to the bad guys here, like a judge. And I think that just opens up a little bit of space for the people of God to have some grace and say, right, justice is going to come about. I don't need to affect it. It's not down to me.
Yeah.
What am I going to do with someone I fall out with? I can stick a banana up your tailpipe, right? Whatever. I could come up with little things. I could come and shoot you in the head. I could come and do some thing. But what can Yahweh do? Well, he controls eternity. So as a believer, I find it easy to let go a little bit of my desire for revenge when I know that, in fact, God will bring about perfect justice.
And if there isn't a God, or if or if God does not execute justice, then that means that the world is unspeakably horrific and dark, because think about how many people in human history have died not having received any kind of justice or resolution. Like, think about the Holocaust. Like, just unspeakable horror happened, and no one has known what to, this is why people don't talk about it, because they don't know what to do with it. They try to learn the lessons they can from it, but it's like, that shooting in Las Vegas, like, several years ago, no one talked about it anymore, because, like, there was no, like, easy point that you could, like, legislate or learn, or, like, nice moral of the story to tie up. It was just absurd and horrific, and that just moves on. And so if there's not a God who brings justice, then all of those stories have no resolution. There's no kind of, like, writing of that. And I find, a world without God to be terrifying in that way. Like, I would not want to live in that world.
And without him, you end up trying to become him, which is actually what got them into this trouble in the first place. Like, you're right back to where you were. I think that this is a complete image of God, isn't it? He's not just a rescuer and a dispenser of grace, but he's also a judge, a dispenser of justice. He's both. That's a much more complete picture of Yahweh.
I mean, I think he executed judgment on his own people by bringing about this disaster, right? Yeah. And so he will execute judgment on everyone, but it's how you respond that will change the game. So you can respond by repenting like they did, and then you get grace. Or you can not respond and you can just try and get your own way like these other nations, and you get a different kind of judgment. So it's, same judgment. Judgment can either bring you to, like, crisis precedes renewal, right?
Yeah.
So judgment can bring about repentance, and it can also open your eyes to see that the ultimate judge will deal with everything hard that's ever happened to you, and you can let go a little bit of trying to exact your own revenge.
I think that's so important.
Yeah. Or you can dig your heels in and say, no, I'm not repenting. I'm not turning away. I like my own stuff. I like my own way.
So God's justice here then frees the people up to let go of and experience healing from the things that have taken place before. Yeah. No, that's really good. Yeah. Well, before we wrap it up, it's quite important that we pause this podcast for a brief word from our sponsor. We have a commercial here produced by the providers of Bacon Sunday, which I'd like to share with you.
Ben hasn't heard this yet.
Sunday, Sunday, Sunday. Bacon Sunday at Christ Church, Fox Chapel. Like bacon? Like Sundays? Then come to Bacon Sunday, as the men of the vestry serve bacon, egg, and cheese muffins from our certified professional-grade kitchen. Too extreme for the Methodists, too extreme for the Presbyterians. Bacon Sunday is too extreme for Pennsylvania, but not too extreme for Christ Church, Fox Chapel. Bacon Sunday, the second Sunday in Advent, December 4th. Only at Christ Church, Fox Chapel. Sausage also available. Terms and conditions apply.
I'm Pastor Ben Hughes, and I approve of this message. Well, it's got it all, hasn't it?
Wow.
What a great ad for Election Day.
Who is that?
It's our own Joseph Milwaukee.
Oh, my goodness.
It feels like it's got it all there. It's got kind of the election thing going on, obviously bacon, Jimi Hendrix, the American National Anthem. I really feel like I belong in this country now.
Wow. Wow, thanks. Yeah, and I gave my assent, I guess. It's clearly...
Yeah, that was obviously you. But
they have things called deep fakes. I would call that a shallow fake.
Yeah.
That's funny. Great. Well, do come to Bacon Sunday.
Yeah.
We're looking forward to it.
I will now.
You will now, won't you?
Besides it being my job, but like I'll totally be there. Yeah. It's great.
One of the weirder podcasts we've done.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
You know who loves it?
God.
The Lord. That's right.
The Lord.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a podcast of Christ Church, Fox Chapel. We're nearing the end of Joel, getting ready for Advent, and looking forward to looking at the person of Jesus Christ and how so many of these promises in the Old Testament are fulfilled in him. Thanks for listening. And if you want to be on the podcast, let us know. We'd love to have you. God bless.